Hello, I'm Lindsay Wallace, and I'm going to be teaching you how to make plastic bags out of plastic bags. Basically turning this, or at least about 100 of them, into one of these. Much sturdier, much better use of the plastic, and it can hold a lot more than you think. Now, the trick to this is turning the single-use plastic bag into a bunch of loops that are then combined into Plarn, or plastic yarn. Now, this is my 1-inch width plastic yarn, or Plarn, meaning that I cut loops that are 1 inch wide, but today I'm going to show you how to do the 2.5-inch strips, or loops, to make a thicker Plarn that works up a lot quicker. It takes a little bit more than the 1 inch, but if you're just beginning, it's probably a lot easier to work with. And I'll also show you 2 different ways of cutting. Now, when working with a 2.5 inch, I use a really big, thick crochet needle. This is a, get out of the light. It's a size P, or an 11.5 millimeter. What you use can also just depend on what you are most comfortable with or what you happen to have on hand, which is how I decided on the P, because I already had it. Okay, so the first step of turning this into plastic loops is to remove the big parts that you can't use. The bottom and the handles. Those can't be used for this. Now, I don't just throw them in the trash. I usually collect them in another bag that is designated for collecting all those odd bits, uneven, any other kind of film plastic that can go in the same recycling as the plastic bags. And when it's full, I tie it up and I take it to any of the stores that accept plastic bags for recycling. So some of them still do end up at recycling, but not quite as many. Now, the first thing I do personally also is I look for holes. Usually I find little itty bitty holes, and no, those won't really matter, but the ones that don't have holes usually end up being relegated for cat litter. See, there's the cat. Now, I usually do this with craft scissors. You can also do the rotary method, but for just cutting off the bottoms and handles, it's just faster to use the scissors. You gotta straighten it up later anyways. So I just cut off the sealed part. I have to say, this is my first time doing any kind of instructional video, and the whole range of depth from where I'm at now and the bottom where my little table or cutting mat is kind of weird. La 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 la. Cut that off. Cut that off. I usually don't bother with the giblets just because it's a little hard to get those and not cut too deep. Besides, they'll get cut off when I smooth things out. Now, the next step is I like to find the seam. Now, you could just fold this based off of how it was as a bag, but, you know, it's not as clean. Well, now, a good thing to show you is without the handles or the bottom, it's one big loop. I guess, theoretically, you could crochet just this really, really fast, but it'd be really super thick, and you'd need a bigger crochet hook. Maybe save that for a mat or something. Now let me untangle this from what I just did to it. La da 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 da. Alright. I like to get it smoothed out first. I like to take the seam where it's all fused, and I'll fold it there. And then I will flatten it down against my, I shaved already, okay. Flatten it down against my legs, or my lap, or the table. I just don't want you to see me I don't mind my hands doing a Vanna White, but it's hard when I can't see where I'm at in the screen. Then I will fold it over. It's just easier without bubbles because it doesn't slip quite as much. So I'll just measure these up. Now, if I'm doing the scissor method, which is hand scissors, these are my craft scissors. They're designated for whatever, so don't worry. I will fold this up again and again until it's only a couple of inches wide. Then, using my fingers as a straight edge. See all those rough, funky edges? Other way. Yeah, we don't want that. So, I will even it off a little bit lower, just to be sure. I'll cut it with the scissors. And that will also, yeah, whatever. Oh, look, see? This will happen sometimes. I will straighten it off, and that scrap will go in the scrap bag. Now, the other tool you need here, sorry I didn't say all the tools beforehand, is a ruler. And that's pretty straightforward. I will line up my fairly smooth top with the 0 mark and line it up along here. Now, the good thing about the 2.5 inch loops, if you get it a little wonky, it's okay. It's not going to hurt the integrity too much. Then I'll go down to the 2.5 inch mark. And I will make a little snip. And sometimes I will keep going. You can either stop and cut all the way across there. Or let me line this back up where it was. Or you can keep going down to the 5 inch, which is 2.5 times 2. And then down to the 7.5, etc., etc., until you get as far as you can. Let me see. 1, 2. Until you can no longer get any solid 2.5 inch strips. Now I can get a 1 inch strip out of that, but that's that. So, I will cut this all the way across and show you the loop. Okay. There's a bit of a wonky edge here, which, that happens. Just trim it off, and into the scrap bag it goes. Yes. See? My nice 2.5 inch loop. I will continue to drop my scissors. I will continue to clip across. Clip, 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 clip. Whoop, 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 whoop. Sorry, that's certain sounds, certain associations. Alright, now, the way you actually make the Plarn is that take the loops. I like to straighten them out just so I get them nice and scrunched up so they don't make any weird knots. Take one loop, pull it through, first one, then you loop it back over itself, pull it through, so you get a nice knot like this. So each one is looped into the other. And you pull them evenly and makes a knot. And then you smooth it on down to the end so that it's even. Because you don't want any funky loops. Because if I just grabbed where I thought was the end, I'd get a lot of extra on one side and it would mess up with crochet. Yeah, that's not easy to work with. So, smooth it around. Now, you don't have to follow my exact technique. I've done this so many times, I don't think much on it, because it takes a lot of these loops. I bring it under, open it, slide the rest of the new loop in, and you keep going. And you're going to do a lot of those because you need, let's see, for the 2.5 inches, you need 8 3/4 8 ounces. Wait, what? 3/4 8? No, 8 3/4 ounces of the 2.5 inch loops. Now it's going to take a while, but that's what binge watching is for. Now, the other method that I talked about is using a rotary ruler and rotary cutter. Now, if you have these, you probably already know how to use them, and me explaining it is kind of infantile. But for those of you that haven't used them, if you end up wanting to do a lot of plastic bags, like you get hooked on it to the point where people are asking you, hey, how do I make these bags? And you're like, oh, I can't really come to you and tell you how to do it because of quarantine, so let me make you a video. Yeah, when you're at that point, then you're probably going to want to use a rotary cutter. Now, again, a lot of it is the same thing of you cut off the bottoms, you cut off the loops. And if I'm rambling, just tell me in the comments. I always forget to read the comments. No, I'm just kidding. I'll probably read them for this. All 2 of them. Oh, I should probably let you see this again. Snipping off the fuse bottom because it is not conducive to our methods. That sounds really ominous, like... Yeesh. Like, I'm thinking of a genre of literature, but I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But if I listen to the titles, you'd all be like, oh yeah. But then you probably think I'm paranoid. Okay, again, seal it, or you fold it along the seal. Smooth it out. Usually helps to uncrinkle both sides. Now, with rotary cutting, one good thing is that you don't hide as much from yourself. So you only, what I mean is you only fold it over once. And you remember how before I had to cut the bottom twice to smooth it out because I didn't see what was on the other side? Because with rotary cutting, you're only folding it over once. You can see everything. And because it's also fairly translucent, anything that's on the inside, you can still see that too. Now, I have this lovely grid pattern here below me. I'm not actually going to be using that for this. Because. Though, actually, no. I will. Because it's going to be a lot easier for you to see. But normally, you don't, when you're at it and it's right in front of you, you don't really need to. So, for those of you who don't know about rotary cutting, keep watching you. Those who do know about it, go on cutting plastic bags and making more plastic bags from them. But basically, this is just a chart. 1-inch plastic that you can see through. It's a ruler. There are much better instructional videos out there about rotary cutters and rulers. Go watch them if I don't make sense. And that'll get you hooked into a whole new world of crafting. But for these purposes, I just like to line this up, line the top part up with the folded seams, move it over a little bit so that I'm pretty sure I'm getting all the funky rough parts. Disengage the safety because, oh my goodness, this thing is sharp. I will put it against the edge. And there goes, like a tiny round guillotine. And as you can see, the edge here is very, as you see here, the edge is very, very smooth. Da-da-da. Now, I like to flip it over because this is just easier. So, my ruler is 3 inches wide, which means if I line up the edge here at 1/2 inch in, then I have 1/2 1.5, 2.5 inches to here, which is where I like to cut. If you're left-handed, you're going to want to do opposite. But let us line this up again for our viewing audience. Line this up. Now, I don't know if you can see this very well, but here is the 1/2 inch mark, which gives me 1.5, 1.5, 2.5 inches. And I will roll it along there. And ta! Now, you may be thinking, that is a lot of work just to cut one strip. Thing is that when you're using a rotary cutter, you can cut several bags at once. Probably, 4 to 5, depending on how good your grip is and keeping them from slipping. Because obviously they're a lot thinner, they can stack. And it's a lot easier to work with. So that's where a lot of the speed comes from. And as you can see, if I compare this one, which is cut by rotary, nice and smooth, to this one, which was cut by scissors, and you can see it's kind of wonky. But once they're all tied together, it's kind of hard to tell which way they were cut. It's just a lot to do with speed and preference. And still the same way. Now, can you tell me which end was cut with which method? Nope. Exactly. Now, as I mentioned before, I like to use the 1 inch, which makes, instead of a bag like this, see, this is 2.5 inches. And okay, yeah, sometimes the rough cut gives you wonkies, but whatever. That's part of the handcrafted charm. So that is 2.5 inches. 2.5. And this is a bag made with 1 inch strips. Much smaller, a little bit less thickness. Put them side by side for you to see. Ooh. But it takes a whole lot longer because, as you can see, much smaller stitches. For the 1 inch bag, 1 inch strip, I should say, I use this crochet hook. This is a K. And in comparison, there's a much smaller hook. I have tried using smaller than this once. Only once. Though sometimes if I'm using a very thick bag, like the materials itself are just stiff and hard, I will still use the big crochet hook because they are not cooperative materials. That's the thing about if you're going to mix different kinds of bags, mix ones that feel the same, that they squish down the same. Does that make sense? 2 bags. See how when you squish them, they come up to about the same thickness? And they make the same sound, crinkly sound? That's good for mixing. At least to start with. Later, when you've made a couple of bags, if you want to get wild and crazy, whatever. That's your prerogative. I have gotten myself into enough crazy projects that I have no room to speak. Well, that's going to be the end of this video, because there's not much point in me going into how to start the project until you actually have enough plastic loops, and that will take you a while. So come back later once you've got, for the 2.5 inches, you're going to want 8 3/4 ounces. If you decide to go the wild and crazy route with the 1 inch strips, you will need 7 1/4 inches. Alright, I think that's it. We're going to start with, when we get to that point, we're going to start with how to crochet a circle. Well, that's next time. Bye.